Hey, Michael Janda, I'm here with Tom Ross, and we are going to tackle some topics. The first one we're going to dig into is the marriage between marketing and design. And I just want to highlight that Tom is in London, I'm in the United States, and we both have the same microphone.
Consummate professionals. What can I say, Michael?
It's crazy. The $100 mic from Best Buy. You guys have Best Buy over there?
We don't, but I swear this is like the go-to on a budget podcast, isn't it? But they're great. They're great. I love the Blue Yeti.
So, Tom, why don't you jump in and give us some thoughts on the marriage between design and marketing and how these two elements work together in what we're doing as designers and marketers too. I mean, we have a variety of different people that follow our content.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're obviously fantastic, Michael, at teaching both design and marketing and that sweet spot between the two. But I think that's quite a rare thing. And I've grown up with a foot in both camps. So I got into both from a young age. I was about 12 years old and I started learning design. I started doing some early freelance work. At the same time, I started building websites with my best friend and just trying all these different ventures and learning marketing and branding and all that good stuff. And so I've always loved both, but I feel like often there's a disconnect, right? You have a lot of people who are marketers and entrepreneurs, and you have a lot of people who are designers and creatives. And often there isn't that much crossover because, as I'm sure you've experienced, Michael, the majority of creatives seem to hate marketing, or at the very least, kind of view it as this big scary thing that they shy away from. And then equally, marketers, often they're horrendous at design. You know, have you seen some internet marketers' websites where it's just like, my eyes, terrible. Like terrible,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I love being able to do both. And it almost feels like a superpower. And it's something which I just wish for every creative. And the way I like to think about it, both design and creativity and marketing and business, they have strong points and they have weak points. So let's look at design, right? Design makes stuff look beautiful. It lets you, create really compelling content and brands and cut through in a really positive way. But what's some of the more negative aspects of design? Often it will be stuff like imposter syndrome. The doubt that racks so many creatives. Often it will be the starving artist where people like really struggling financially, despite being incredibly talented. And then on the flip side, you've got marketing and business. Like, what are some of the strong points there? People are often successful in those spaces. They use marketing like a weapon and, they convert people really well. They turn it into a viable business. They know how to work their market and serve their customers and that kind of thing. But on the negative side of marketing, what does that look like? I would say that looks like sleaze, marketing, pushy, salesy sleaze.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the stuff where creatives kind of judge marketers or marketing in general and think, I don't want to be like that. That seems really like dark arts kind of stuff. And so for me, the magic happens where you basically get rid of the worst parts of both, and then you combine and marry the strongest parts of both. Because then you lose the sleaze and you lose the insecurity and the financial struggles, and you combine the beauty and the functionality with the business success and marketing know-how, and they basically put each other on steroids, and that's where fireworks start to happen. And I love that.
Yeah, I really like that. It's an interesting perception that marketers and designers both have about the other discipline. And the truth that everybody needs to understand is that marketing is the umbrella and design is under this umbrella of marketing. It contributes to marketing. In fact, when I started my agency, my background is design. And I started my agency as a design agency. By the end, I was calling it a marketing agency. That's what we were doing because design is marketing. And so designers, you can't neglect that fact that marketing is what you're doing. You contribute to that. The purposes are the same. The purpose of marketing and the purpose of design, it's the same. You're trying to create a relationship between two entities, a consumer and a brand. That's the relationship that you're trying to create. That's the objective of marketing. And then to create an action by that consumer. Most marketing is either to create an action or to communicate a message to a certain target. And that's the same purpose of design. Design isn't there just to look pretty. It's there to contribute to the objectives of the marketing umbrella as a whole. And a lot of designers don't understand that. So, like you were saying at the start, you as a designer, you've got to understand marketing principles and how to create this relationship between an entity and a brand or a product or whatever it might be. Create this one-on-one relationship and then invoke a response or an action from that target customer. The objectives are the same. So do you have any thoughts about that, Tom?
Yeah, I think you're completely on the money, to be honest, Michael. And yeah, there's a lot more crossover than people realize. So I think they have a habit of what's called splitting, where they make the two things very disparate in their mind.
Yeah.
And there's a huge amount of overlap, as you just alluded to. And I think especially when you do it properly. So at its most basic form and its least effective form, design is just kind of pixel pushing. You know, the client sits on your shoulder and move the cursor there.
Yeah.
But as you start charging more and evolving your services and skills, it often gets more from like just logo design to brand strategy and that kind of stuff. And that's where the overlap really happens, because as you finesse and develop your skills as a creative, you have to start thinking more about the intended audience, about who it's going to be serving, the end kind of emotive response, business response, actually trying to elicit some goals on the back of this. You know, what are we hoping to achieve? It's not just playing around in Photoshop, moving a cursor. It becomes so much more. And that's where the two completely collide in hopefully a positive way.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that you said splitting, that we have a habit of splitting. And we do this, man, with terms from UX and UI. Everybody's trying to segment. UX is this and UI is that. Marketing is this and design is that. Service design is this and product design is that. You know, we're trying to silo these elements. And the truth is that they're all this overlapping. And, you know, most of them overlap in an umbrella of customer experience could be one of the umbrellas, or brand experience or brand strategy could be the umbrella, or marketing strategy could be the umbrella. There are a lot of different ways that people try and define all these terms, but most overlap. And be careful whenever you see a list that says this one is this and this one is that for marketing, design, UX, UI, customer experience versus brand strategy, or whatever they might be. There's overlap in all of these things, and it's difficult to try and silo them, and probably unhealthy. We should probably try and silo things based on the objective, not based on the tasks that happen in each of those things, because there is a different objective in a customer experience strategy versus, you know, UX, for example. That's probably a bad example.
But being intentional, I guess, is what you're saying. I completely agree. And I mean, just to kind of disprove the fact that marketing is scary and sleazy and all of this kind of stuff, I'll give you an example. And this is on a very minor level, but it's all marketing. Every Monday on my Instagram, I do something called Make Them Smile Monday. I don't know if you saw this, Michael.
I didn't catch. I mean, I've seen your content, but I didn't catch the.
So it's on my stories, not on my main profile. That might be why you didn't catch it. But I put it out on my stories, and I basically say, guys, like, you know, we're all part of this creative community. Let's support each other. So I picked out one person that I feel is deserving, but doesn't have many eyeballs on their account. Nice. And I want everyone to go over and leave a really positive, supportive comment on this piece. And what normally happens is they're an account that gets like 1 or 2 comments, even though they're a really great artist or creative. And they end up with like 140 comments because
that's awesome.
It really engages well because people want to be part of something. And I get all these messages being like, it's so nice that you're doing this. And people love feeling part of it. And it's got this sense of community. And the person who receives it out of the blue as a complete surprise is like, what's happening? And often they don't realize what's gone down at first. So they're losing their minds being like, this is the greatest day ever. And then I normally get like a audio message from them in the DMs being like, like you made my week. And, you know, And that's great. That's so fun. And I love doing that. And there's no tangible kind of business results from that. But I primarily do it because it's the right thing to do and it's fun and I love supporting people. But I'm under no illusions. That is good marketing because it positions me as someone that does care. It probably makes people think better of me. So in the future, whatever I go on to do, more people are going to want to support me because I'm the guy that bothers to do stuff like that. And I'm not the guy who's like forcing sales on them all the time. And so that's one example of a billion where marketing definitely doesn't have to be sleazy. And in fact, it shouldn't be. It can be fun and it can be creative. And you can really merge creativity with some of these ideas and do nice stuff that helps people. And that's what marketing should be.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great example. And one of the beauties of why that's working for you is because you're not doing it as a marketing vehicle. You're doing it because you are a nice guy, because you do want to share some love with somebody who deserves it and doesn't get it. So the purpose behind it, consumers are smart and they can sense when you're doing it to sell your wares versus doing it just because you're a good person. And you go to, social media strategy, and where growth comes from, adding value to people. It's you have to do it just to give and give and give without trying to sell them something in the end. I do business coaching. I have books that are published. I have a UX course, and I hardly ever promote those things because I even feel bad if I say, hey, buy my book, or hey, did you know I have a course? People find it because the people who are interested are going to dig and they're going to find those things. But I don't.
It's inbound marketing.
It's off brand for me to try and push my own junk. My biggest salesy thing I ever did was for Gabe's UX Bites book. I made a little commercial thing for him, but it was to push his stuff, and I don't get any cut of any of that. It was just, again, like you said, I care about him. He's a good friend. I collaborated with him on some advice while he was working through how to figure out how to do his book, and so I just want to give, and that's the healthy brand position that can give you a really great brand image. So it does contribute to marketing, but you don't do it because you're trying to market something. Let me jump in and say the one, as I was thinking about this question between the marriage of design and marketing, one of the brands that it just is epically good at this is Nike. And Nike, they pretty much invented the I'm selling you something and I don't tell you I'm selling you something style marketing, which is so common here 30 years later. But you go back to the 80s when Nike invented the just do it style marketing, a sizzle piece of somebody, and it's a foggy morning and they're putting on their shoes and they're running. And then at the end, it's the swoosh, just do it. It's such perfect marketing. So let's talk about the design and marketing marriage. The design of that, the creative execution of that is genius and high end and engaging. And you watch the Nike commercials, all 30 seconds of it, you watch it. And you get something out of it. You get the response. You get
an emotive response, right? It's like a visceral thing.
I'm going to go for a run. And you know what? I'm going to put on my Nike shoes because my Nike shoes are that's what I should be wearing when I'm out running. But Nike never says, buy our shoes, buy our sweatpants, and go for a jog. They don't say it. They just say, just do it. And it's all that emotional response. So it's such a good example. They started it 30 years ago, but it's such a good example of the way that marketing is done today, where people don't want to be sold something. They want to make their own decision, or allegedly make their own decision, because Nike is really helping you make a decision about their brand and what shoes you should wear, but they're not saying it to you. And so I think that they were really on the forefront of this style of marketing that it's just a very passive emotional connection style marketing that is the way that people need to market products today and need to market their own personal brand and their company brands today.
Yeah, I agree. And I also want to push back a little bit. And
Good.
I have to do that because I'm the honest entrepreneur as my whole brand, right?
Okay.
And so I have to keep it completely straight. I think everything you're saying is fundamentally correct. I think it's particularly effective with giant brands like Apple is another one, right? They generally don't push the sale. They just kind of show off how great their products are and people come flocking. But with regards to both of our collective audiences, Michael, I actually don't think there's anything wrong with selling. I think it's just understanding the distinction between branding and sales, which I talked about, I think, in my Instagram post that went out yesterday. But my Make Them Smile Monday, right? That's part of my brand. That's going to change how people perceive me. All the value that both of us put out, the video we're doing right now, the value right this second we're delivering, that's all branding. We're not selling anything. We're not saying go get Michael's book, although you should. So that's kind of more on the sales side. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, this is all brand building. It's all value, value, value. Yeah. And it's quite holistic. And I'm such a believer in that. Equally, though, I think there's nothing wrong with a good direct sale when it's not kind of masquerading to be something else. And so when people are making that sale, you know, I have friends like Lauren Hom, for example, if you know her, the very talented digital letterer. She has Passion to Paid, which is her course. It helps tons of creatives everywhere. And when she launches it, you better believe she launches it. She's not just putting out value, you know, 365 days a year and hoping people discover that on her website. She's saying like, go buy this thing. It's amazing. I've made it for you guys. I've listened to your struggles and your pain points. And that's why I've created this. Here's why it's really good value. Here's why you're going to get an ROI if you buy this thing. You know, it's going to give you more value than you pay me. That's effectively what she's saying. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And that's where I love the fusion of marketing and design because, you know, I don't have a problem with the more direct stuff. I'm helping someone right now to sell her analog paintings by doing some strategies in the DM where people identify themselves as people that are interested in buying it. And then she does some really creative stuff in the DMs that compel them to go and like, you know, bid on her work and try and grab it and get really excited and swept up in that. Yeah. I think where sales becomes a problem is when it's 90% of what people do and they're not doing any brand building and they're not providing value and it's just sell, sell, sell. And we've all seen those social media and like Facebook pages, right, from companies where that's all they're doing. We got another offer. Get this today for sale. Get this, get this. Yeah. That's where it falls down. But I think for someone like you who is providing so much value, when you next release a book, you saying, guys, I'm really proud of this. I worked really hard on this. Like, it's incredibly good value. You should go get it. I wouldn't judge you for a second. I'd be like, good for you.
It's a good point. And I am in 100% agreement with you on that point, that it is okay to sell. And it is okay, you know, take a designer trying to sell a customer into your services for your company. It's okay to sit at the table and to resolve their concerns about the price or whatever, and to adjust the scope and to tell them how great it's going to be and why you should do it versus your competitor. All of that sales in general kind of has this bad name. It's not, if you do it right. It's okay to sell. So I agree with you on that. The beauty of good marketing and good branding is when you don't have to do it because your customers do it for you. And Nike is, again, going back to this example at the start, Nike is that, man. You get, Adidas is even better. Adidas is even better than that because Adidas has had the fashion sneaker line all buttoned up with the Yeezys and the NMDs and things, that these became this hot item. They didn't have to market them at all. They just had to release them because their community marketed and sold these for them because they're wearing them. The cool people are wearing them. And all of a sudden it's this thing. And go back to my example of pushing Gabriel's book, UX Bites. He didn't make that commercial. I made it out of my own goodwill. So I got duped into marketing his book for him just because he's a friend and I'm passionate about his content and I want to help him out. I marketed his wares for him. he never even made a commercial like that himself for his own book. And I love that when people share my book in their stories or their posts or an unboxing and things. And I always share that content, but I'm always so grateful because it builds awareness without me having to do anything. And, if we look at this holistic style of give value, give value, give value, you'll build these loyal fans to your brand. They will care about your product and they will love it so much that they'll want to share it with others. And then your marketing just is on a self-fulfilling, perpetual thing that happens because of that brand loyalty that you create.
Yeah. And again, I'm the biggest believer in this. We go very all in on that with my company. We're all about how we treat people, and that's reflected in our brand and reputation. But I have seen that takes years and years in cases. It's a pretty long play. And so in my mind, sales is more immediate, and branding takes years. And I talk to designers who they're just trying to land a client, in which case I'm like, okay, yes, have a fancy website, yes, build your brand. But if they spent years trying to, come up with the next just do it, or the build it and they will come mentality, I think that struggles. So I'm like, okay, invest the time to figure out who you want to serve, who your dream types of clients are that are actually attainable right now, and then go and pitch them today, because you need to tackle it head on. So it's definitely a combination of the two. But I think this is weird actually, Michael. I think pretty much everyone else is doing too much sales and not enough branding. And I think designers are maybe the one group of people that are doing the reverse, where it's all branding. They never sell themselves, but also the branding they're doing isn't that effective, because their idea of branding is putting out like generic content that is like showing creative talent, but doesn't have a voice or hasn't been done with intent.
Start ringing as a result of that. So
right. And it's not going to happen. Yeah,
it's not going to happen. So create the content, create the brand image, and then knock the doors of who you want to work with. You have to do both. That's where that marriage.
I'll give you another example if you want. So with my content, I've been taking it more seriously on Instagram, and the biggest thing I've noticed is the quality of the content and the value it gives is the biggest variable to if it's going to succeed. So the better I make my content, the better it does. The more it gets organically shared and everything you're talking about, right? My community do the marketing for me. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't also think about distribution and how to get in front of wider audiences. So I've started doing weekly Instagram lives with friends that have bigger accounts, because that's a good way to bring value to their audience, but get their audience discovering me. We're doing this call right now, and it's amazing to meet you. And I feel like we're going to do so much cool stuff in the future. But it serves both purposes. I get to geek out with you and make a new friend, but I'm getting in front of your audience, and you will get in front of mine when I post some of this. So that's cross-pollination, and that's done with intent of both of us growing and people benefiting. And so it is that kind of intentional marketing that you should layer on top of really good quality value and content, because then it just kind of helps put that on steroids.